Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 106 of the Primetime Rundown, presented to you by Black Cats NYC, alongside my guys Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We welcome you to another edition of the Primetime Rundown on Friday the 13th here in the month of January. Crazy stuff, fellas. It's already the calendar year of 2023. Boy, are we getting old, and Mike no longer is the size of an M&M. Ian Schraier, how are you? How are things on your side?
Things are well. It's January 13th, like you said. Happy Friday the 13th to all, and still no Mother Nature raining down the S word upon us, so which is fantastic. And we're just a month or two closer to the spring, so bring on the NFL playoffs, and here we go.
Mike Szabo, it's going to be a fun NFL playoffs, but listen, how the hell are you right now, huh?
Pretty good. Catching my breath from the insane fanatics that is and experience that is the New York Rangers last night. So
yes, that's right. And you know what I'm experiencing? I'm experiencing the New York Islanders, who simply can't buy a goal to save its life, and also can't buy a save when Ilya Sorokin when he's on fire. But you know, when it matters the most, he can't get it. But it's unfortunate. But again, ladies and gentlemen, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest hit single, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us. Be sure to download it on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Apple Store, iTunes, all of the above where you can find your music. That is where they are. And also, they have made their debut on Sirius XM as well. So that is some pretty cool stuff. Be sure to hear that throughout there if you have a Sirius XM account. So let's get things started here, guys. We've got so much to discuss here, of course, and Ian does have a special guest there. We'll be talking to her later on in the broadcast, of course. But Mike, we've got so much to talk about in the world of the NFL. We've got National Hockey League stuff. We've got some Major League Baseball news too, where Mets fans they're no longer in tune with Carlos Correa and all of that stuff going on. So he's done. He's over in Minnesota. We'll break that down of how that all happened. And also we'll be discussing, of course, wild card preview. And we'll be talking about our picks from this past season and who came away as the victors. So let's get things started here, guys, of course. But first, there's so much to talk about, though, outside of wild card weekend. Derek Carr posted a cryptic tweet that said that he was done in Las Vegas. So that is pretty much his swan song. He's done. And the Raiders look to be, looking for a trade partner to send him elsewhere. The Colts, they're not going to be trading for him. You figure 7 times is a charm with the quarterback ever since Andrew Luck retired. It simply has not been good there. But we don't expect him to go to Indianapolis. Mike, what do you see with this, and how big of ramifications this Derek Carr, trade, if you will, has on the rest of the Las Vegas Raiders organization? Because you look at Davante Adams, he signed there because of that very close, the cohesiveness with Derek Carr.
Well, I don't want to say it's end of an era, like anything iconic happened during it, but it kind of is. I mean, Derek Carr's been there for 9 years. There's been an air. I don't want to say an air of stability, but there's been consistency at the position. I think sometimes he gets completely downgraded from what he is. He's been a fine quarterback. I don't think he's anything amazing. It was anything exactly amazing for the Raiders. I think he had some good moments and whatnot. And a lot of bad ones. There's plenty of interceptions and whatnot. But either way, I think you're going to see quite a drop off for the Raiders in quarterback for next year, unless they do something drastic. They're really they're in the mediocre spot of, they're not good enough to be in a top 5 pick and draft one of the big time quarterbacks. They're not good enough, obviously, to be in the playoffs. So really strange spot to be in for them. And Carr, I mean, there are plenty of places I think he's gonna go. I think obviously for the New York market, everybody's looking at the New York Jets first and foremost. Whether they're going to bring in a veteran quarterback or not, Carr, I'm sure, could be at the top of the list. Miami, who knows what's happening with Tua and his health after all the concussions this year. So there's quite a couple of destinations that I'm sure would be quick to get Derek Carr on the phone.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too is that there's so many different teams that have inquired, about Tom Brady too, and that's another thing too. I don't want to say so many teams, but there's the Raiders potentially may give Tom Brady a call. We've heard a little bit of rumbling that maybe the Miami Dolphins, depending on Tua Tagovailoa's health, could potentially, make a play for Tom. But then there's also some other rumblings too that Jimmy Garoppolo could potentially be heading east too to play for his former defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh, who's now the head coach of the Jets. So there's a lot of turnover we expect to be, and something that obviously not a lot of us thought that we would ever say in quite a while is that maybe Tampa Bay may be looking for a brand new quarterback as well, Ian Schraier. It's definitely something that is one that we'll have to keep our eyes out for with Derek Carr, and it's going to be weird to see him not in a Raiders uniform.
It's going to be a little weird. I mean, especially with all the rumors out there about how maybe the Davis family would kind of throw the bag a little bit at Tom Brady after this season to try to bring him to Las Vegas, which is just mind-blowing in general. But I think what Derek Carr has proven over his just long tenured career with the Raiders between Las Vegas and Oakland is that he's reliable. And if there was one team that just kind of stands out to me to say he would make an improvement for a team, I'd say it's the Jets. The Jets are the one team I think on the list of potential suitors that could help them win now. We know the skill players the Jets have. We know obviously let's just, I guess, speak specifically on offense between Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, even grabbing CJ Uzama from Cincinnati to play tight end, and Tyler Conklin hasn't been too bad. Whereas other teams where you might see you look at New Orleans, what's the situation coming back with Jameis Winston? You look at Indianapolis. Indianapolis right now is all for mortgaging the house potentially to move up to trade with Chicago for the number one pick. Yep. So I think if there was an area that made sense, obviously when you think of the Jets and you think of Robert Saleh, Joey, I think you hit the nail kind of on the head there with Jimmy G's familiarity with Robert Saleh when he was the defensive coordinator there. But either of those quarterbacks at this point, and Woody Johnson has already said, as owner of the Jets, that he is ready to invest in a veteran quarterback. So I think it's just a matter of which one it's going to be at this point.
Which Ian is very crazy, because when you heard in the beginning of all of this saga about Zach Wilson, where we heard that eventually through sources or whatever it was, that the Johnsons and the coaching staff were very far apart on the quarterback situation. The Johnsons wanted Wilson, and Saleh and company wanted Mike White. So who obviously will be getting the blank end of the stick there? You figure it would probably be the coaching staff, because it's very tough to say no to the owner signing your checks. But again, it's and I'd love to have, and I think we saw this, Mike, our friend Kevin Connolly from Storm the Paint, the one that covers the St. John's Red Storm, he put out a good tweet because he's a Jets fan, and he said something about, this is typical. This is just typical Jets nation, typical of us being Jets fans, that we have to deal with this, where there's always a disconnect between coaching staff, between the owners, between whatever it is. And it's so unfortunate that stuff like this has to happen. And, what you saw also, too, at the end of, or I guess the final press conference of the 2022 season that featured Zach Wilson in their exit interview from the season, since they didn't make the playoffs, Zach Wilson did say that whatever vet comes in, that he would make them, quote unquote, work like hell to obviously win that job. Now, again, I mean, unless he, calls his father and says, hey, did I do this right, or whatever it is. I don't know. I think that, again, there's so many different landing options for Carr, for Garoppolo, for whoever it may be. And again, you brought it up. So I'd love to hear what Jake Arthur has to say too, the Indianapolis Colts writer that we had on a few times, because again, there's just so many different options that the Colts have. But you run it's almost like a revolving door with quarterbacks with what they've got. Let's take a peek here at a couple of our comments here. So first off, Al Carl from oh my goodness, from Essential Wrestling Podcast. Al, that's my fault. My goodness. Al, thank you so much for tuning in here. Lions are the best non-playoff team in the NFL. Shame they couldn't run the table like I wanted them to, but thank you for taking out the Packers. There you go. Well, and for those that don't know, Al had wrote a fantastic couple of articles that featured Lions and Jaguars come to the Super Bowl. And there were a few points that he had there that were really, really on target for the most part. And it was not that far-fetched. So pretty cool stuff. The Raiders statistically are horrible on defense. Quarterback is and was never their issue. I don't know so much about that. I think also when you look at it, especially this year, Al, and I think, and I want Ian and Mike to chime in as well once I'm finished here. You saw a completely different playbook with Josh McDaniels. And not only that, too, we've seen this story before. In Denver, it was a disaster. Now in I was going to say in Oakland. In Las Vegas, it was a disaster in the beginning of the year. There was no cohesion. You couldn't get the puzzle pieces to fit. And towards the end, yes, things clicked and things glued together and meshed. But it was too little too late. And I almost feel like that the scapegoat here is Derek Carr.
Yeah.
I still think he has more left in the tank.
I like you said before, Joey, he's serviceable, and he's been a veteran quarterback in this league for a reason. Unfortunately, I think he's just been one of those quarterbacks that really has never gotten his opportunity to shine as much, just because when you look at the AFC West in the last decade and a half, most recently, obviously, it's been a decade dominated by Kansas City. And then before that, you had Derek Carr going up every year against Peyton Manning. For those few years he was in Denver. I'm not trying to say that Oakland, Vegas, that the Raiders couldn't compete. But after last year, it felt like this was going to be the year to really put the Raiders on the map after that whole Week 18 fiasco last year with the Chargers, and were they both going to go to the playoffs and finish in a tie. And you felt good about the direction of the team. Yet Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. And you say to yourself, wow, like if this team could maybe, get a little better defensively, you've got a quarterback maestro in Josh McDaniels coaching this team. Unfortunately, the Belichick coaching tree, we know the history of that, but this is disappointing. It's disappointing to see Derek Carr's career come to an end. Probably a very, I don't want to say an underwhelming career, but from a perspective of where he probably could have taken the Raiders to, whether the coaches were wrong or just really the talent around him, the talent pool around him wasn't all that great for many years. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. However, I think that he's going to get a fresh start wherever he goes, and we'll see what comes now of Josh McDaniels. He's going to have a chance now for the first time since Tim Tebow to groom another quarterback.
Good God, a tumultuous ending for Derek Carr, to say the least. What a disaster. Mike, I'm going to throw you on the spot here. Who do you see the Raiders go to for a quarterback, maybe?
We've heard the ambitious sort of rumors out there about Tom Brady and the relationships that you had with Josh McDaniels there. I mean, you got to hope they do something like that. Otherwise, what, they're calling the Jets for Zach Wilson or something?
No.
There's
no.
I don't know, maybe you get Baker Mayfield. He had a good last couple of games with the Los Angeles. You're really going, down the radar, I think, from there on. I think there's the big mystique of, Brady and whatnot, but it's not an easy answer at all from going beyond where they go to from Carr. And it's really interesting because I don't want to say they built this team to win now, but I mean, you traded and then signed Devontae Adams to a big contract to be this, shiny final puzzle piece to get the Raiders over the hump and into the playoffs and really start to be a competing team. And it just all fell apart this year. And I think they just want to move on from Carr, as like you said, sort of being a scapegoat, and in the way that, it's been 9 years, and they kind of want to just change direction, even if probably in the immediate term it's not going to be a good direction at first.
Guys, let's keep on moving forward here. And something else that we got a chance to see today, which is really big news for the Los Angeles Rams fans out there. Sean McVay, the head coach, will return in 2023. There was so much chatter about him potentially not returning. And obviously, you want to talk about the ramifications of one man leaving. Boy, you would have lost one of the best players, if not the best overall player in the National Football League, in Aaron Donald, who pretty much glued himself to Sean McVay in terms of, how I'll be there for however long he's there for. And now I think Rams fans can breathe a sigh of relief that Aaron Donald plus Sean McVay will be back. And again, obviously the big asterisk with Aaron Donald still, we have not heard anything from that camp yet, but the last couple of seasons, and not even the last couple of seasons, last off season after the Super Bowl, Aaron Donald had said that he was also very tired, but he accomplished everything that he wanted to. He did say, let's run it back, but we're going to run it back for however long Sean McVay does the exact same thing. So he's back in the fold. New Orleans has officially claimed that they will retain head coach Dennis Allen. So, I mean, again, that's obviously something that we expected to. I don't think that Dennis Allen had a bad season. It was just he was handed a brutal deck of cards with terrible, terrible players, and things simply didn't go well, and obviously did not give him the benefit of the doubt, because they still had a lot of Sean Payton's players, and the salary cap issues and the dead cap and all of the above. So that there. But going back to the McVay stuff, though, for a quick moment, how big of an impact is this for the NFL as a whole? Because of the, at one point, guys, we remember a few years ago, the coveted coaches was the McVays of the world, the young up and coming guys. Then that eventually became Zach Taylor. That eventually became the Brandon Staley's of the world as well, which we'll get into in a few short moments too, about my grievances with him. But it's the younger coaches have really been on the market a lot, and they've been a hot commodity. And, a lot of people say Sean McVay is like, 37, 36 years old, and he's ready to hang it up already. It's crazy stuff. Someone take it away.
Yeah, well, I think the only reason he would have left is we obviously heard last year after the Super Bowl win about the whole idea of pulling him away from coaching to go into the TV booth, and I think that's always going to be something that's going to be brought up. And I think whenever he does decide to move along from coaching, I think he'd be a fantastic color analyst. You've seen all the social media, whatever the social media teams for the Rams, they'll do all sorts of features on him and his incredible memory of memorizing all these plays from years ago and whatnot. But for right now, for the NFL, he's a fantastic asset. He's a fantastic coach, and he's only 36, yet it feels like he's been around forever in terms of coaching. Of course, he was an assistant with Washington way back when, and but yeah, he's still just 36. So for now, I think he's a fantastic asset to the NFL and to the Rams, and they'll still be competitive. I think as long as he's there. I think this year you hope was much more of an outlier, that it was just purely down to injuries combined with the Super Bowl hangover, and that next year they would be back to their best with everybody fully healthy. And I think he's got quite a bit of a future. I think he won't go as long as, the great coaches of all time, and the TV money will just be too powerful. I think eventually there'll be one off season where he just decides, might as well. Maybe it's when Stafford and Donald are all age-wise, all done. But yeah, I think in the immediate term, it's good for the NFL. He's still around.
Ian, finish us off with that one.
I thought Szabo did a good job of hitting on the points of that. Well, really the both of you, with regards to how the coaching styles, it's become a young Really, we've seen the up and coming coaches like Sean McVay and Zach Taylor, and that you could really pony up the Rams season to injuries and the loss of just too many key players. Obviously, losing Cooper Kupp was huge. The jury was still out for me when they really had decided to acquire Allen Robinson, who really is still what feels like is trying to transform his career a little bit from even going back to his days in Jacksonville. The loss of Aaron Donald, can't understate that. But I thought really where we saw the two players I thought where we saw a big drop off for the Rams this year. And sure, call it it's big experience, it's big names. Von Miller leaving to go, obviously going to Buffalo, and Odell Beckham Jr. Granted, Odell was injured up until basically the Super Bowl last season, but really, I thought those two players in the second half of the year for the Rams made all the difference. Obviously, we know that Von Miller is a first ballot Hall of Famer. We know when you have Cooper Kupp on the opposite side of the field, and you have to, look out for Odell running slant routes over the middle or be a deep threat down the field, whatever it might be. This was a team that really maybe the Super Bowl hangover got to them a bit, sure, but I thought there were two or three key pieces that were also, in addition to those injuries, that was missing from them. Because really, I had the Rams winning the Super Bowl this year. I thought there was no reason with Matthew Stafford back in the saddle that he couldn't lead the Rams back to the promised land again. So there were definitely some key pieces missing in addition to those injuries.
I was gonna say, yeah, looking at those Super Bowl picks, Ian was the only one that had the Rams there. And a lot of these teams are still in it, but yeah, that one was tough to have the Rams as the Super Bowl champs. Obviously didn't work out, but we'll see how they can respond next year. Something else too, guys, or rather moving into our Super Wild Card Week preview. There's a lot of great games, but first, before we do that, Week 18 had a lot of positives. Ian, let's start with you. We always go through again since you've since you've been on here with us, or since you've made your return. There we go. Now we're just getting our English back. Okay. Since you've made your return, we've told you about the top 5 things that we always talk about week after week, Mike and I, and now we're going to include you in that. Start us off with with your top 5 things from Week 18.
Sure. So I think the first thing I got to do, and I have a friend who's waiting for an apology, so I hope he's tuning in right now, being a lifelong Lions fan. Is last week for our last week in our survivor pool, I had picked the Green Bay Packers to defeat the Detroit Lions. I thought it was going to be almost destiny for Aaron Rodgers, who the Packers got out to a really hard start to the first half of the season, and started to slowly bounce back and claw their way back into the playoff picture. And to put Rodgers against the Lions on Sunday Night Football, that's exactly what NBC just can't help it with the Lucas comment. NBC, having the opportunity where for the Lions, Lambeau has just been a house of horrors for them, and for the Lions to come out and put out just a tremendous performance to knock their arch rival and someone who's just a player like Aaron Rodgers, who has just tortured them for the last decade plus, to knock them out of the playoffs after they were seemingly eliminated after Jason Myers missed the first field goal but didn't miss the second. I should say the doink off of the first one and then the miss on the second, for the Lions to really still get up for that game, even though on the poor scheduling part of the NFL to not keep those games on at the same time. I know Szabo can definitely speak to that a little bit more. Second piece for me, I think we'll kind of allude a little bit to our upcoming interview on Monday with Brandon Laurie, with regards to how do you fix Dallas, right? What is going on with respect to Dak Prescott, the interceptions? Obviously, I don't want to say it's the top 5 things. It's really the 5 most glaring pieces of Week 18. So definitely want to just give that a little plug about looking forward to our instant reaction on Monday, when we discuss a little bit about the Cowboys and identify really what the keys are going to be for them to beat the Bucs on Monday. Another piece for me, I know just from our show last week, Damar Hamlin, and then to watch the game on Sunday and to see Nyheim Hines return not just 1 but 2, including the opening kickoff for a touchdown. that was outstanding. And rumors that DeMar is going to be out there on the field pregame before Sunday's wild card game against Miami. So that's number 3 for me. Number 4, again, just more, maybe not so much a, I guess, compliment as just something to be concerned about. I'm a little concerned about Trevor Lawrence going into tomorrow night's primetime game at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. We could all probably make the argument that as good of a coach as Mike Vrabel is, that and I'm not alluding to the instant reaction from earlier this week, but also that without a return 6, the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably not in the playoffs. I'm not trying to give all the credit in the world to the Titans for running a good game plan, but by the same token, you could argue that Trevor Lawrence probably threw that game away if not for that defensive touchdown. And then lastly, I just think it's coincidental that Nathaniel Hackett is out as head coach of the Denver Broncos, and in Russell Wilson's first game with Hackett no longer the head coach, he has his best game yet as a Denver Bronco. So we listen, anybody who wants to sit there and throw the book at Russell Wilson and say he's still not one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, I think he was playing into a system that did not fit him. And let's see exactly who the Broncos turn to as a little tease for an upcoming subject for us.
Nathaniel Hackett was playing Madden in real life. That's what he was doing.
He was hitting the Ask Madden button a couple too many
Exactly.
times.
He was hitting the Ask Madden button, and the problem was that many years ago, when it was, Madden 2007 or 2008, when you would hit the X button for Ask Madden, there would be the play that would light up. And, the later you got, I guess the newer games, right, they don't light up anymore. So I think he would click X, right, and they didn't light up. So he was like, oh, crap. All right, well, I got to pick A, B, or C, and he would just choose C, and really he should have chose B. Not a good situation there, but definitely solid points that Ian had hit on. So we won't all go into our 5 because I'm sure a lot of us are all pretty much similar. But let's move into our wild card Saturday preview, and just to go with some of the comments here, Rob DeLuca absolutely killing me, Ian. Yeah, there you go. That's what happens. Ian, Szabo, they typically kill DeLuca. It's not ideal. 2 of the 3 people in here, and thankfully not me, absolutely killing me and my back. 14-4. What more could I have possibly done? Okay,
we'll get to
that. We'll get to that later on. That is the survivor pool for those that do not know. Excuse me. We'll get to that later on. But before we do that, wild card preview, the first game Saturday, 4:30, Seattle and San Francisco. There's not really much to discuss here, especially since Seattle had a real tough showing in the last game. Granted, they did pull out the victory in overtime, which, again, nice thing, but that will not fly against one of the best teams in the NFL in San Francisco. And Mr. Irrelevant under center, Mike, again, and it's in San Francisco. It's a day game for the Niners. Brock Purdy is lighting it up, and Seattle is also away from home. And we know what Seattle brings to the, San Francisco brings to the table week in and week out, whether it be on the road, whether it be at home, their fans are always there, loud and proud.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more, lopsided playoff matchups just because of Seattle's been heading in the wrong direction in the last month or so. They started out so well. I think give credit to Geno Smith for having a really great year and reinvigorating his career. But the last couple of games just hasn't gone well. They completely went the wrong way. And the 49ers are legitimately the hottest team in the NFL right now. They have a 10-game winning streak. Brock Purdy has been fantastic, a testament to Kyle Shanahan's coaching of how, I don't want to say easy, but how well he makes quarterbacks fit into the system. He has a system not built around one individual. He has a system that a quarterback learns and builds off of. And, we hear how many years of of praise that there is for Kyle Shanahan around the league, and how many years he's put in, and how well and how great really of an offensive mind that he is. And he's done really well with Brock Purdy. He's dealt with, there are so many candidates this year for Coach of the Year, but I mean, you got to give credit to Kyle Shanahan too. I'm not saying he's Coach of the Year, but I mean, Trey Lance was supposed to be the guy this year that was starting to turn over the keys and everything. He gets injured. Well, we all trashed on Jimmy G, the game manager deluxe, everything. And, now they had to give him back the keys, and he did well. Then he gets injured, and now you're turning to Mr. Irrelevant, and yet they're the number 2 seed in the NFC, and they're about as good of a team as any. You can't you can't ride into the playoffs any better than how San Francisco is currently. I see them easily dominating Seattle at home. They're just too good right now. Brock Purdy is playing too well. You got too many great weapons. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, I think will be back. Christian McCaffrey in there. They got Elijah Moore off IR. Be too much, and the Seahawks will just be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and you want to talk about a potential Coach of the Year candidate? Listen, I think there's 4. There's not 1. There's 4. And I know the Giants fans out there are saying, "Oh, you're just an Eagles fan." Rob DeLuca probably saying that to himself right now. There's 4 potential candidates. I'll get to them in a moment. And yes, one of them is Brian Daboll, and it's not in the bag officially for him. Ian Schraier, Seattle, San Francisco. Give us your little preview on this one.
And sure, let's pull up this comment from Rob DeLuca saying Seattle has no chance, Niners by 15, and we'll get back to his earlier comment. Unlike DeLuca and Szabo, I'm not going to say this game has the potential to be won by double digits, but I also think if we see the Geno Smith that we saw the first half of the season, keep in mind, I believe through the first 8 or 9 games of the season, there wasn't a quarterback that had a higher passer rating in the National Football League than Geno Smith, and I can't believe I'm saying that without laughing.
With a straight face, yeah. Legend, Geno Smith. Giants legend, Geno Smith.
Giants legend. We can go down the list of legendary teams that Geno Smith has been a part of.
That's right.
I think if we can't undersell what Geno's done this year. I mean, it's not like the Seahawks got there on the strength of, say, Kenneth Walker. Okay, I mean, if they were down DK Metcalf, granted he's a couple years removed now from one of the better seasons we've seen by a wide receiver, Tyler Lockett. I don't really put much past Pete Carroll. I mean, this is the same coach who a decade ago or so, how many years ago, where they came in as brutal underdogs against the New Orleans Saints and Beastquake, Marshawn Lynch, and they pull off the upset. I think that's where Joey was kind of going with it too. I don't foresee.
Mode was born that day.
Yeah, I mean, well, that game was in Seattle. Granted, this game is in San Francisco, and to DeLuca's home field advantage point, because I love his home field advantage points. I don't know if that's going to matter much here in this situation. I think that San Francisco's playing really, really good football. Arguably one of the better defensive lines in football. Really a complete defense is what they are. And I think the one name that Mike said that really stands out to me when it comes to San Francisco and what's really transformed their whole season, and you could argue is probably one of the best midseason acquisitions in football history, is the acquiring of Christian McCaffrey. This is a guy who's been torn by injury his whole career. It's literally like the guy runs off to go grab a drink of water. It's like, did he sprain his knee? And to come to San Francisco now, and this guy is getting fed the ball with regularity. He's literally, I mean, if you look at his game tape from his days at Stanford, they're almost using him in the exact same fashion, exactly what the Carolina Panthers were hoping to get when they drafted Christian McCaffrey. So sans injuries. So I think San Francisco wins this probably by 10 plus, but I think a lot's going to come down to which Geno Smith we see tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's another point I wanted to bring up here that DeLuca says. He says San Francisco hasn't been a home field advantage for the 49ers in the playoffs since Montana. Why is that suddenly going to change? especially against a division rival. I don't know if it will be like that, but again, they're playing in the friendly confines of Levi's Stadium. It may not matter. It may matter. Who knows? Whatever it will be. Seattle does a decent job traveling. We talk about home field advantage all the time because of DeLuca. I don't know if it really matters much here in this game. I don't know if it does. I brought up the fact that San Francisco will have home field advantage. I believe that they will. I don't believe that there's going to be it's not going to be like what we saw San Francisco out in LA. It's not going to be like that, where Seattle would overwhelm San Francisco. But again, this team is one of the, or if not the completest team. I don't even know if that's a word, but the most complete team in the NFL. Not by much, but they are the most complete team in the NFL. San Francisco wins this one by a score of 27-17. That's what I think. And I think it'll still be 10-point game. And I don't believe that you're going to see a lot of what the receivers can do against this tough defense. Noah Fant is going to have a tough time. I think DK Metcalf is going to be effectively shut down. And I don't expect Kenneth Walker to really do much in the run game. I think it's going to be really tough to watch, I think. I'm glad I got to work tomorrow, so I won't be able to watch that first game. But guys, the second game, though, the Chargers and the Jaguars. A lot of folks may think, well, you know what? Maybe that should have been the 4:30 Saturday game. But you know what? Jacksonville is fun to watch. The Chargers at one point were fun to watch prior to these stupid moves that head coach Brandon Staley decided to make in Week 18, which was play his starters when his squad was locked into the 5. Well, you want to talk about ramifications, I guess, as the kind of the theme of our show tonight? Mike Williams has a small fracture in his back, and he's out for the game tomorrow night. They didn't say if he was out for the whole playoffs, but they did say that he's out for tomorrow. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Justin Herbert played all the way to the fourth quarter. Now, you're playing for pride, sure, but with playing for pride, you could also be putting these guys' health at risk when you have a more meaningful game the next week. It doesn't make any sense. And now you're seeing it. You're seeing it here. You've got you've got Bosa. You have on the other side, which has been not even close to where it should have been, the team's defense. Bosa, Mack, help me, guys. You got a whole bunch of guys there. It simply is not an ideal situation. Jacksonville wins, and I don't think it's going to be close, but I think Trevor Lawrence, what Ian brought up in his Week 18 review, I think it was one game. Granted, it was definitely a game that, if they lost, they would have been out. They would have been on their couches watching this one, with the Chargers going to Tennessee instead. I think I personally have full faith in Doug Peterson and Press Taylor to get this man right. The problem, though, is, and we spoke about this with Demetrius Harvey a couple of days ago, Mike, is the fact that he lost his left tackle also. Their offensive line is in shambles, and they're dealing with a whole bunch of injuries. Jacksonville still wins. Ian, take it over.
Have they announced the status yet on Rashawn Slater for tomorrow's game yet? I believe they said that the hope was that he was going to be back in time.
I believe that is the case. I will take a peek right now.
Yeah, I think that getting Rashawn Slater back, who last year was an All-Pro in his rookie season, getting him back is going to will not play. According to ESPN, then that really changes things a little bit. Definitely losing Mike Williams is a big piece of this puzzle for the Chargers. I think having Keenan Allen there is going to be still very, very important. What you really have to a certain degree is a battle of whose running game is really going to break out more. But also remember one thing, that the Chargers are coming in with a bottom tier run defense. So I'm really going to say that this game is going to be decided on how well the Jags can run the ball with Travis Etienne. It's been a couple weeks now that I believe they rested Etienne the week before, but I don't think he's played since the Jet game before that. So having Etienne there, hopefully at full health, will be crucial for them. He's really been I feel like he's kind of been the difference maker to help to get that team going. Not to understate what Christian Kirk has done at all either. But this is man, I hate the 2 Saturday games so much. They're really difficult to predict. My gut says go with the home team here and to say that Jacksonville pulls it out. But also, if this really becomes a situation where it becomes a little bit more of a shootout, and the Chargers are able to move the ball through the air as effectively as we've seen with Justin Herbert, then it could be a long day for the Jags. So I think right now, without their left tackle, and having Trayvon Walker there, and having Josh Allen there, should be a difference maker, and adding in the fact that Travis Etienne is running against one of the poorer run defenses in the NFL, I think gives the Jags the edge.
Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that with Bosa and Mack on the other side being a poor run defense? Who would have thought that? Not me. Any day of the week, if you put a gun to my head and said, who would have a poor run defense, Jacksonville or with these guys? Jacksonville, 100%. They're younger. They're a younger squad. I simply don't think that it would work. That's crazy how it's, the tide has shifted over to LA being poor.
The issue is playoff experience, though, Joey. That's the issue, and that's
how much do the Chargers have? One season.
I understand that, but also you've got guys like veteran players who've been there before. Maybe not necessarily to the playoffs, but have a little bit more on their resume that might translate a little better come tomorrow night.
Definitely fair. I mean, Khalil Mack has no idea what the playoffs is. Bosa has no idea what the playoffs is. Justin Herbert, if I'm not mistaken, has no idea what the playoffs are. And neither does Austin Eckler. But someone that does know what the playoffs is all about, and yes,
oh boy,
my bias comes right in, is the head coach, Doug Peterson, who knows how to win. And let me tell you something, all of you, every single one of you. You talk about Rashawn Slater potentially being back. He's now out. You look on the other side, Cam Robinson tore his ACL. He's also out. Both teams are missing their blind side blocker. That's the problem. So it's a matter of who can go the other way. It's a battle of those offensive lines. How can it be better? J.C. Jackson is still decent. Mike, what do you have here with Jacksonville and the Chargers?
Well, to fan the flames of your bias, you have Doug Peterson and Brandon Staley in the coaching matchup. You pointed out week 18 for Brandon Staley playing his starters when it was ridiculous of him to do so. We've seen over the course of 2 years now, with Staley being the head coach of the Chargers, some questionable game management decisions and whatnot. And you really can't have those sorts of errors going up against a very experienced Super Bowl winning head coach in Doug Peterson. And I think a lot of the points that Ian made is right. The running game, Travis Etienne has had a fantastic season. They had the two running backs, him and Robinson, and they gave the keys mid-season to Travis Etienne, and it's worked wonders for them. And I think for Trevor Lawrence as well, we mentioned the concern around him. He sort of got a test week, I guess, what it turned out to be, really.
It's quite a test week.
It was quite a test week because literally the division and the playoffs were on the line. But now I
agree. I believe, you know what? I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know what? I believe it was a test week. You know why? Because they also came away with it. They came away with the win, right? And on top of it, too, I'll get back to you in a second, Mike, is that, sure, it was a test week and they passed the test. I think the defense passed the test, obviously, but the offense, they were carried into the playoffs. Go on.
And I think that gives Trevor Lawrence a chip on his shoulder, knowing that last week they had, he was in a big game at
Yeah.
home, division on the line. You had to win that game, and there was really question marks around him. He really didn't rise to the occasion, like you said. It was the defense that really did so. Now you take a sigh of relief, you take a breath, you thank your lucky stars for the defense and getting that defensive touchdown, and you live to fight another week. And now you're here in the playoffs. Now you're Trevor Lawrence. You're thinking, I have another chance to deliver in a really big game at home against the Chargers team that they've had some good games this year. They're 10-7. They played really well at times, but at others, I think again it's been underwhelming. From 10-7 is 10-7, but I think it's slightly underwhelming from where a lot of people hype this team up to be. And they've had quite a bit of injuries on both sides of the ball. And we mentioned again about the questionable game management decisions from the head coach, and put all of that together. And I think Jacksonville does come away with it. I'll go 23-17.
In addition to when we were talking with the Jacksonville Jaguars beat reporter, Demetrius Harvey, when we spoke with him from the Florida Times Union, he brought up about how Evan Ingram, Giants legend Evan Ingram, has now been used as a blocker, and he has really made the difference since Cam Robinson went down with an injury, and how good he has been in that role. And, obviously a little more pressure on the receivers there, but it also gives more running lanes for Travis Etienne as well. But again, how can you go up against one of the best running backs in the NFL, if not the best, in Austin Eckler? Going to be really tough. I'm very intrigued to see this. Jacksonville wins by a score of 24-21. Jacksonville by 3, they win. Rob DeLuca's comment, quote, "Battle of the flow." Good God. Herbert versus Lawrence. Loser cuts his hair, but the Chargers are injured. However, if Williams and Bosa were healthy and both playing at 100%, my pick remains the same, Jaguars by 3.
Are we still really putting Justin Herbert's flow the same as Trevor Lawrence? I mean, that's long hair. I mean, Justin Herbert's got a great set of hair, but I mean that's I don't know. I don't know if you can compete with the length of Trevor Lawrence. Then
I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you. From someone that'll be getting plugged soon, I'm very jealous of Trevor Lawrence, and I wish that he could cut off some hair for me and just give me a mullet or something along those lines.
Now we need a Photoshop, Joey. Now we need a Photoshop.
Wait, say it again?
Now we need the Photoshop of you with Trevor Lawrence's hair.
Ooh, that's not a bad idea. We'll have to definitely work on that come Sunday when we're watching football down in the man cave. Not a bad idea. So we'll definitely take a peek at that, and we'll have to show all of you on social media. Wink, wink. We're not showing you. You want to talk about a terrible game, Ian? Buffalo and Miami.
Yeah.
You said you couldn't stand the Saturday games. How can you stand Miami and Buffalo? Or can you stand that game, Buffalo and Miami? It's a disaster.
Well, I think there were Chris Russo or a couple of people have written already that said that Wildcard Weekend has 2 really good games, 2 really awful games, and 2 games that can go either way. So I think that's a pretty good way to approach it. I don't think this is going to be a fantastic wild card weekend like it was last year. I think a couple of the matchups seem a little bit more lopsided, and 2 key quarterbacks are out, and one of them happens to be in the first game that we're going to talk about Sunday, which is Miami and Buffalo. And Tua Tagovailoa is out. He has not been cleared to play. They're going to lean on rookie quarterback Skylar Thompson, who, if anybody watched their game against the Jets last week and saw that the final score, if I recall, was 9-6. They're probably in for a pretty long day against Josh Allen and company in Buffalo, no less. Like I said during at the top of the broadcast, the likelihood is that Damar Hamlin is going to be there and come out onto the field pregame. I mean, I think look, I think even on paper, you would say to yourself, Bills probably winning this by 3 touchdowns, but this game really doesn't have much to it. Buffalo 38, Miami 10. I'll give them a touchdown.
Before we get to Mike, DeLuca, this game stinks. Skylar Thompson stinks. Buffalo Bills by at least 3 scores. That's
well,
all.
At least we agree, you know.
Not only do the two of you agree, does Mike Szabo agree with all of that? What's your take on this lopsided game, which I believe might be even more lopsided than San Francisco and Seattle?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's the worst wild card game of the weekend. And listen, in all seriousness, I hope Tua really goes and checks himself out. I hope he gets well. I think he's taken an absolute beating this season with all the concussions and whatnot. I think he's never gotten into a rhythm and fully been right this year. So hopefully he takes this off season and gets completely healthy. Concussions are no joke. That takes a long time sometimes to get over those things. So hopefully he gets his health in order and whatnot. But it's a real unfortunate situation that now, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater has not proved this season to be a reliable backup for Miami. So you thought you could turn into a serviceable veteran quarterback in the situation, much like when we get into Baltimore later on in Tyler Huntley, although there's questionable on the term serviceable there. But now you're turning to a rookie in the playoffs and Skylar Thompson against now, with all the circumstances, against the behemoth of the Buffalo Bills, along with the sentimentality after the Damar Hamlin situation. So Mike McDaniel, I think, is a solid coach. Maybe I'm sure he's strategizing something now that he's known for pretty much most of the week he's not going to have Tua. So I don't know if he has something up his sleeve, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to make this game competitive. I think Buffalo wins 30-7.
Wow.
I think Szabo's kind of underselling Buffalo's offense a little bit there.
They'll pull their guys in the fourth quarter.
Starters the whole second half. I mean, I will say this though. It might be the most exciting game from a perspective of how badly is Sean McDermott going to run up the score, and how many different ways is Buffalo going to find a way to score?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to Dolphins fans here, but I think I have to call a spade a spade.
I think
you could argue that Buffalo has, without question, these last 2 years, one of the most high-flying, exciting offenses in football. Them and the Chiefs. So, I'm sure everybody's looking forward to the possibility of a Bills Chiefs AFC Championship in Atlanta, but neither here nor there. But I think that the opportunity just to watch Josh Allen ball out against a team that is running a third string quarterback out there, I think it'll at least make it somewhat entertaining, even from a one-sided approach.
This is something that I see here with Buffalo. There's too many for Miami. There's too many obstacles, way too many. First off, Tua Tagovailoa, we know about his, as Mike said, his concussions, plural. We know about the long-term effects that, come from concussions. So we don't know about his career and his long-term football future. I'm sure that a lot of his mentors, handlers, staff, team members, whatever it is, that work under Tagovailoa and company, that they're definitely evaluating that for sure. They have to see what the deal is with his brain. And again, this is not to say to those folks, well, Damar Hamlin is, we're focusing on this one piece, and then we'll get to Damar in a few short moments. But Tua, there's a lot of health risks there too. And we've seen so many different things about CTE. We've seen it with concussion syndrome, where you simply do not have You simply don't lose those symptoms ever. And we saw it in the game of hockey way too many times. We've seen it with Marian Hossa. We've seen it with Chris Pronger. We've seen it with Johan Franzen. And I know Rob DeLuca's watching, so he can probably spit off more names than I just came up with. But, in the game of football, too, it happens. Look at Wes Welker, too. Welker had a whole bunch of concussion issues as well. He eventually retired. There were other injuries that went into that, too. But can't figure. There you go. DeLuca says we don't have that kind of time. Exactly. There's too many to name off. But again, you've got those obstacles there. Teddy Bridgewater, Mike brought up too. Serviceable backup, he's not. So Skylar Thompson pretty much is the de facto starter. Now, the way that the Dolphins are constructed, they look pretty good. But again, a team that is now playing for Damar Hamlin, their first playoff game, or their second game since the Damar Hamlin scare, and almost losing his life on the field at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati. This team, I believe, will run the table in the AFC, but going back to Miami side of things for a moment, there's so many distractions too, where there's a lot of sources and little tidbits going around that Mike McDaniel's job may be on the line too. That's another thing, because the owner, Stephen Ross, is a legitimate head case. Miami also, they don't have a first-round draft pick because of what happened last year with Tom Brady and the tampering with the phone call. So there's no 32 picks. There's only 31 in this upcoming draft. Draft class for the NFL. So like I said, there's a lot of distractions, and I think Miami, they lose by a score of 42-14. 42-14 is my final score, and Buffalo is going to come out and absolutely dominate. Something else too that Mike and Ian did not speak about is that it looks as if that Josh Allen's elbow issue seems to have resolved itself. And I don't know how it has. It's got to be the trainers and the doctors, obviously, or potentially healing or whatever. But during the season, in the middle of the season, we saw Josh Allen take these sidearm throws that, probably took the pressure off of his UCL. There was a lot of chatter that, and you saw it in Buffalo Bills, on Buffalo Bills Twitter, through Vegas, the sports book, saying, oh my goodness, the lines are going up and down because of, the possibility of these elbow issues that could be plaguing Josh Allen. And now all of a sudden we're seeing him throw regular arm motion, and he's doing it at a high pace yet again. Buffalo runs the table. Miami should not fire Mike McDaniel. You build around him. You build around, Tua with an asterisk, whoever your quarterback is. You don't do that. You don't fire Mike McDaniel or even have those words come out of your mouth at all. Then you would be on the same line as the Houston Texans, who are a legitimate, circus. Buffalo wins 42-14. Next game, guys, to talk about, of course, is the game that you two are very intrigued about, of course, as fans, Minnesota and the Giants. It's going to be a good game, 6 versus 3. Giants were locked into the 6th seed. Almost took down the Eagles, too, in week number 18. But Minnesota, they had a decent season, to say the least. But the reason why I go with decent is because they suffered a couple of massive losses. One against Dallas, and the other, I'm losing my train of thought. Their second
Detroit.
Detroit. Yes, thank you. Right, that was that was at Ford Field too, where they were blown out. And those are things that, I would say may scare some Vikings fans, and it should. The Giants, the last time that they played in Minnesota, nearly took down Minnesota. I'll let you guys start it off, Ian, and then we'll get back, and then I'll conclude it.
Where to break down this game? I mean, from a Giants perspective, they're coming in defensively at full health. Whatever you want to call full health at this point, but everybody was a Dory Jackson, Xavier McKinney, Leonard Williams, Azeez Ojulari. All the key players that were listed on the injury report were full participants in today's practice. So those are key. There are some key players there that the Giants, especially in the defensive backfield, did not have a few weeks ago in Minnesota. One of them was Dory Jackson. The other is Xavier McKinney. Both of them did not play. So they were depending a lot more on these third and fourth guys after Fabian Moreau, who had the task of trying to match up with Justin Jefferson, to have third and fourth guys going up against guys like Adam Thielen. And we saw TJ Hawkinson have a big day in Minnesota a few weeks ago. I think the other big point about this game always comes back to the same thing that it always comes back to when there's a team that has a Kirk Cousins on it. It's Kirk Cousins. It's the Kirk Cousins factor is when the sun starts to fall, when the sun starts to set, which Kirk Cousins do we get? And I do think on paper that the Vikings are the more talented team. And that's even more than on paper. We saw the difference in records. The Giants were not supposed to be in the playoffs this year. The Minnesota Vikings very much were. The Vikings were supposed to win the NFC North in what was a very weak division, and even with Aaron Rodgers still in Green Bay. They're offensively more talented. It really is going to come down to Kirk Cousins versus the Giants defense, really, truthfully. The Giants are going to have to at least contain Justin Jefferson again to how much he can do. I believe he only scored one touchdown in the regular season matchup, so that's going to be a key factor. The Giants did a very good job stuffing Dalvin Cook for much of that regular season meeting. It's obviously the most exciting game on the schedule, arguably. You've got a game that was decided by a 61-yard field goal in overtime on Christmas Day, on Christmas Eve. So I think it's going to leave a lot for interpretation. Even as a Giants fan, I'm trying to stay level-headed and unbiased, which I think I'm doing a good job of here. But at the same time, it's a tough game to predict. I'm still leaning Minnesota here. I love the job Brian Daboll's done as the Giants head coach. He's obviously one of the coaches in the running for Coach of the Year, but Kevin O'Connell's done a phenomenal job with the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think we can understate that either. I'm going to say prediction.
You can take your time and we can get back to you.
I got it. It's going to come down to another field goal. I'm not going to say what team, not because I don't want to pick against the Giants, but I'm going to say 23-20. I don't know what team.
Wow.
Second field goal again, though. Field goal, not in overtime, regulation.
Mike Szabo, you're a Giants fan. You're a biased guy. What do you got?
Yeah, I was just about to say probably.
Do we have a picture, by the way, Joey, of Szabo filling in on Brian Daboll's face yet? Do we have one of those yet for Mike yet?
No, not yet. We'll definitely get that.
He's very good at what he's doing. He's the one bald guy in New York sports who knows what he's doing when coaching or GMing a team. So I have no qualms with Brian Daboll.
That's true. I mean, I could tell you the other bald guy, Gerard Gallant, he's finally getting to know what he's doing. And look, Gerard Gallant has some hair now. Looks pretty good.
Yes, he's finally heard the grievances. He saw the helmet throwing by Jacob Trouba. He
saw the yelling too. The yelling is no good. The yelling's no good either. So go on.
Yeah, he finally learned, not to scratch his top guys, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I think what a lot of what Ian said is totally true. I think this is it's a very intriguing game. We obviously saw the regular season matchup, how tight it was, how intriguing that was. I think Daniel Jones had one of the better games of his career in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
He threw for 300 yards and whatnot. Obviously, the key to any success in a Giants game this year is how well Saquon Barkley runs the football. They generally scheme good plays for him in order to get him the yardage, to be able to move the ball downfield, run really well. And we'll see how Minnesota adjusts, because Saquon had a really good day also a couple weeks ago. Saquon was rested, among others, last week in the meaningless Week 18 game against the Eagles. So he's fully healthy, rested, and ready to go. So again, the key is going to be, how well Saquon runs the ball. And again, Daniel Jones is going to have to come up with some big throws. We know all the wide receiver core issues, the lack of weapons and whatnot as the season has gone on. But it's interesting to see how some of these guys, the playoffs, different atmosphere and whatnot, how they're going to adjust, whether that's Jones or everybody else. Isaiah Hodgins has been fantastic. Picked him up off the waiver wire, and he's been fantastic for the New York Giants. And it's going to be a really intriguing game. Defensively, like Ian said, a lot of the same principles that you had a couple weeks ago. You got to do the same thing again, keeping Justin Jefferson, locked down to a certain extent. I don't know, is Dalvin Cook going to be in the matchup this week? I know
he came back last.
Him and Alexander Madison, both of them.
Yeah, so you're still going to have to contend with Dalvin Cook. Interesting, the rushing attacks and whatnot. I agree with Ian. I think this game, again, is going to be decided by 3, but I'm sorry, I'm going to show my bias. I think the Giants will do it, and they will win. I will go...
While Mike's still thinking about it, I will say this. I think the key, and I thought Mike kind of touched on it because I really wanted to add this. When you've seen the Giants succeed the last few weeks, the key for them has been controlling the clock and the time of possession. Not only does Saquon Barkley need to be able to run effectively, not only does Daniel Jones need to have another good day throwing the football, they need to have extensive drives because that's what really worked for them in Minnesota. That's what worked well for them in Washington. That's what worked well for them when they clinched at home against the Colts. Discounting the game, the Week 18 game when they rested everybody against Philly. So if you take the last 3 games into account and find out why they were so successful, it was because they had drives of upwards of 6, 7, 8 minutes, even approaching 9 sometimes, that really ran the clock because on first and second down, they were handing those balls off to Saquon. They were getting those third and manageables. They would take deep shots if they had deep shots, but this isn't a Giants. This isn't a team because the Giants really don't have enough offensively to really be throwing the ball and airing the ball out down the field. They're short to intermediate throws, short to intermediate plays. They try to run some end arounds and try to run some reverses and even put Saquon sometimes in some wildcat plays. Excuse me. I think that's going to be that really, like, in addition to what Mike's saying about Saquon and Daniel Jones, because ultimately that's what it comes down to for the Giants, but they need to have long, extensive drives. Got to try to control the clock and control the number of 3 and outs.
I have five keys to this game on both sides. The first is Kirk Cousins. Which Kirk Cousins do we see? Do we see nocturnal Kirk Cousins that does not poke his head out at all? Or do we see daytime Kirk Cousins and do we see him light up the Giants? That's one. Number 2, do we see KJ Osborne potentially make his way in if the Giants can shut down Justin Jefferson effectively, which you don't really shut down Justin Jefferson, but you, as Mike said, you contain him. You contain him as best as you can. The difference between the Vikings and the Giants is that the Vikings have mass amount of weapons. The Giants don't really have weapons, but they have key players that can get you to the promised land, like a supporting cast, if you will. They can get you there. They have the gel that, they don't have one star player. They have role players. Thank you. There we go. They have role players that can eventually get you there. We talk about I guess the third thing also is a battle of 2 coaches of the year. And Kevin O'Connell is one. Brian Daboll is another. I brought up 4 potential coach of the years, right? 4. I had those 2. I also had Pete Carroll, and I also had Doug Peterson. Those 4 will be vying.
No Nick Sirianni.
No, because they were supposed to. Because with all of the, and we'll get, and I'll finish the Giants part in a second. Nick Sirianni, no, and the reason why is because after the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade, they were supposed to be very good. Were they supposed to be this good? No. General Manager of the Year, Howie Roseman. That's not bias. That's pure fact. Can't change my mind there. But going back to the Giants and the Vikings, though, I still have a lot of faith, and I hate that I'm saying this. Eagles biased aside, the Giants are very they're very gritty. And this is a team that they have no pressure on them. There is no pressure to do anything. They were not supposed to be here. The over-under on wins was 5 this season. They almost doubled it, and now they have 9. They're 9-7-1. Take that tie away, they could potentially be 10-7. Something else also is that they're getting healthier in the secondary. The difference, though, is, again, the wide receivers that and the playmakers that Minnesota has. I believe that the Giants will win, not by 3. I think they win by a full touchdown. I hate it. I hate it so much because that will mean that they will head to Philadelphia. And I hate it. I just hate it. But that is the truth. Minnesota will fall flat on their face like how they've done in previous seasons. And I don't believe that it will be as close as some people think. And I don't think that Kirk Cousins is ready for the show. I don't see it. Now, again, you look at the names. Minnesota has the names. They've got the Zardarius Smiths of the world, over there. They also have, they've got Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, C.J. Ham, the fullback, where they can use them in and out all different times. We brought I could go from top to bottom. I just think this Giants team, they're playing with house money. They're going into a raucous environment that I don't really see as this dynamic environment that will change things. I hate it, but the Giants win by 7.
I do think, Joey, and feel free, and Mike, feel free to agree or disagree. I think in terms of the edge in coaching, I think the Giants have the edge. And not just saying that from a Daboll approach. I'm saying that from a Daboll and Wink Martindale approach, from an offensive and defensive mind. I do think the Giants actually have the edge in coaching coming into this game.
Well, yeah, I think they've worked. They've done a lot more with a heck of a lot less. I think that's where the edge comes from. I think they've come in and done a really good job being able to figure out how to win, knowing that they're inheriting a ton of the roster from a previous regime, have plenty of salary cap issues. Not that that's the coach's issue, but they've completely been able to work around that and play to their strengths and be able to figure out a game plan to win. It's not exactly been glamorous. I think to a lot of prognosticators, obviously they didn't have the Giants here, but even so, it's not been in a lot of glamorous fashion and whatnot. Maybe that's down to the talent. They just wind up, doing enough coaching wise. They scheme up enough plays in order to win the games. But obviously, I think that with the exception of 1 or 2 games this year, I think the Giants in their wins, they don't win by more. I think it's within 1 score. So it's always tight games. It's always gritty sort of games, and I think they, again, like Ian said, I think they've done a really good job in terms of coaching with the lack of talent that they have. But yeah, going back to my score prediction, like I said before, I think Giants win. I'll go 24-21. I think it does come down to a late field goal, just because of that's just been the theme of the Giants season. It's just close games that gritty sort of games, tough defensively, that don't get beat by much, don't win by much. So I think it does come down to a field goal. I think we do see a good game from Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and whatnot. This is an environment they already used to this year. Maybe indoors kind of helps too at this time of year up in Minnesota. So
maybe
I think
it's like -10. But yes, go on.
Yeah, I think put that all together, I think the Giants pull off an upset. I think you're always sort of due for one game in these wild card games over the years. I think you're always due for one sort of upset sometimes. I wouldn't put it past the Minnesota to win, but I think the Giants can do it.
Yeah, and you know what? DeLuca's showing his Giants bias here. There's no doubt.
Do you expect anything less? Do you expect anything less?
No, from DeLuca, no. There is always Giants bias, Eagles hatred, Cowboys hatred, whatever it is, and we can all agree on the Cowboys hatred. But the Eagles hatred, that's okay. Rematch. Giants fans asked for this matchup, and they got it. Now it is up to the boys in blue to finish the job they have started. Finish the job. It sounds like he's going to the Super Bowl. Calm down. We are going to see a back and forth game all day long. This game will come down to Graham Gano walking the Giants to Philadelphia. Revenge is sweet. Giants by 3. So one more. I just need to point this out here. Finish the job they started. I had no idea the Super Bowl starts on January 15th. That's something else, Ian, right?
Well, the Eagles, I think it starts back in August. That's okay.
Yeah. Whoa, really? Okay.
Well, to fan the flames of Rob's bias there and hyping things up. I mean, the run always starts here, right? And if we're going by Giants by 3, think of every great Giants run always features a great late field goal, right? So,
well, we've also as Giants fans have fallen victim to Graham Gano when he was with Carolina from 60-something yards out, Jake Elliott in Philadelphia from 60-something yards out.
That kicked off the 2017 Eagles run, but thank you. Go on.
No, I'm just going to stop there because if I'm feeding into your Eagles ego, well, let's just keep the train running.
That's okay. That's fine. And listen, you know what? I'm the one that didn't actually show any Eagles bias because I would have said Minnesota by 76. But hey, listen.
I mean, if the game's not entertaining, is St. John's at least on Sunday?
Actually, they are. They're taking on UConn. They're taking on UConn. They'll probably lose by 68. No, I mean, listen, this is a game that I hate. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see a divisional Giants-Eagles game. I don't, but I expect it to happen. It stinks. Guys, let's keep moving forward here and let's get off this topic because we could stay on this for the rest of the hour. And, we still have so many other games to talk about and by so many other, I mean, just the final 2, Baltimore and Cincinnati. We won't go too much in depth, Dallas and Tampa Bay. And the reason why is because we would like you to tune in on Monday for our segment that was supposed to be played tonight, but we decided against it. Check out our social media at Observe Eastern on Twitter, Eastern Observer on Facebook, and EasternObserver.com for that segment that you can find on our page, on the Eastern Observer YouTube page. Also search that Eastern Observer on YouTube, and you'll be able to find that come Monday. We will be talking with Brandon Laurie, one of the writers for Blogging the Boys. For those that remember RJ Ochoa, he could not make it a couple of nights ago when we were supposed to have him on. So Brandon Laurie was nice enough to pinch hit for his boss, RJ Ochoa, and come on and really do a fantastic job. And we had a great talk about Mike McCarthy, Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott's issues, the natural grass issues. So definitely tune in on Monday. We'll be talking more about that. So, guys, Baltimore and Cincinnati. There's a lot of chatter here that this one could also be a lopsided game too. Baltimore and Cincinnati, typically one that is not a lopsided game. That's if Lamar Jackson typically plays, but he's not. And there's a good chance also that Tyler Huntley may not play either, Mike Szabo. What a tough situation here for Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore just has been, especially when it comes to Lamar, it's just been plagued by injuries for the past 2 years. I think they've kind of been, the Tennessee Titans this year in terms of like the Titans in previous years. I kind of always had a good record, but never really convincing, and part of the, and obviously not the complete case in regard to the division, but with the Titans, the AFC South, the last couple of years, they haven't had to play their best, and they were able to win the divisional title, and then they wound up losing in the first round. I see Baltimore in a similar sort of mold where, you sort of see them being the 10-7 team this year, and you're like, they didn't really pass the eye test for a 10-7 team for a long stretches of the season. I think the offense just really has not looked good without Lamar Jackson for this Ravens team. I think Cincinnati, they really got right after a bunch of up and down weeks to start the year. Jamar Chase, of course, was injured for a long stretch. You got him back. Burrow's playing fantastic. Cincinnati's really playing well, and I think rounding into form over the last month and a half. And they just played a couple weeks ago, and Cincinnati won pretty convincingly enough. I don't know if it'll be too convincing. I think Harbaugh really coaches his teams really well. Like another divisional game, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say bad blood, because you always have bad blood in divisional games to a certain extent, but I think it was Jamar Chase or someone else, I think, had a touchdown early on in that game last week, and I think that they did like in their celebration, they did like the coin flip, to do a play on the scenario that if the Ravens would have won, it would have been a coin flip to determine where the game would have been hosted, but instead Cincinnati won in its same matchup as last week's, right in the same stadium. So I think that was just a little dig at Baltimore that they have in the back of their minds. But I think Cincinnati wins this again. Baltimore's offense is just not good enough. Cincinnati's rounding into form really well, despite their offensive line struggles. I think that's the key matchup in this game of how Baltimore could potentially stay in it. They have a solid defensive front. We know about the Cincinnati's offensive struggles, and now they have some injury as well. Maybe that's the one area they can exploit, but I still think Joe Burrow and company wind up persevering in this one and moving on. I'll go Bengals 20-10.
Ian Schraier, your thoughts?
Did you guys get a chance to watch, if you were watching Red Zone or watching the Bengals game last week when Joe Mixon scored, that his touchdown celebration was the imitation of a coin flip?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Mike was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, which is terrific.
I actually watched it on the Red Zone channel. I watched it on the Red Zone channel.
Rob DeLuca, help me out if you're still listening, please.
The Red Zone channel is where it is. But go on.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think it's going to matter much who Baltimore's running out there at quarterback, because I really love Cincinnati again coming into this postseason. It seems like as the season goes along, Joe Burrow just gets better and better. And it seemed like even when Jamar Chase was out for a period of time, it still didn't seem to slow down the Bengals. Joe Mixon arguably had a career year this year. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. It feels like a team that's patched together so well. There's not like you look at them defensively and you don't say to yourself that this team is a star defensive team. But I think Joe Burrow is just he really, as I said before, he really gets better as the season goes along. I would not be surprised to see them in the Super Bowl again. I'm not saying that's my prediction out of the AFC. I just think I would not be surprised to see them there again. They've got a great track record the last couple of years against teams like Kansas City and Buffalo. So I'm not so sure that's going to matter much. But when it comes down to this game, yeah, I think the only thing going really for the coaching of Harbaugh, like Mike said, great. Without question, he'll have them prepared. The run game is really the one thing that Baltimore can kind of hang their hat on with the three-headed monster with Kenyon Drake, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins. But, I think the final score of this game is probably somewhere in the range, let's say 35-13, Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And not only that, too, we remember a few months ago. I think when Cincinnati was they had lost a couple of games. Jamar Chase was out,
Yep.
and Cincinnati this was right before their 8-game winning streak. And that's where they're heading into the playoffs now with an 8-game winning streak. Zach Taylor made a couple of changes. Also where Joe Burrow has a little more control. A little bit more. And obviously he has excelled with that and has fully taken advantage of this tweak that a lot of writers and a lot of folks had said, well, what is wrong with Joe Burrow? Is this a Super Bowl appearance hangover? Are they going to get back there? Was that a one and done? Was it a flash in the pan for the Bengals to be there? No, it wasn't. This team is that good. They don't have some of the defensive players that they did. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Trey Hendrickson also hurt earlier in the season too?
Yeah.
I think he's out for the year. So that's a big loss for them too, which obviously they have not missed a beat, which is big. But again, down the stretch, come the postseason, it could matter since he did play a crucial part in the team's success against Kansas City, especially last year in the AFC Championship. But be that as it may, Cincinnati and Baltimore, I don't think it's a good competition. I really don't think so. I think that this one is definitely on my list of lopsided games, with Cincinnati coming away with this one by a score of 35 to 14. That's going to be my score prediction. And Cincinnati they have so many different ways of beating you, whether it be Joe Mixon, whether it be Jamar Chase, whether it be T. Higgins, whether it be Tyler Boyd, Samaje Perine as well. There's so many different players that you can look towards for Cincinnati. And Baltimore, we don't even know who their quarterback is going to be. And that, I think, is really, really crucial because, again, if you could take away the passing game, since Devin Duvernay is out, Demarcus Robinson is, I believe, he's one of the only healthy wide receivers that's there in Baltimore. And then you talk about Ian, that three-headed monster. That, again, if you could shut down the passing game, all right, well, then that leaves you with the running game. And if you can shut that down, you really have nothing else you could do. And again, who knows what quarterback is going to play? That, I think, is key. Zach Taylor wins, and they'll head back to the AFC divisional round come the 22nd of January. I don't think there's really much else you could say with that, just because of how lopsided this game is going to be. And it's wild to say Cincinnati and Baltimore, always a good game, but just Baltimore is just decimated with injuries all over the place. So with that being said, our wild card preview has concluded because of that Dallas-Tampa segment, guys, that we got a chance to pre-record. So again, for those that want to see Dallas and Tampa, our thoughts on that, be sure to check out our YouTube, Eastern Observer, search Eastern Observer, and you will see our segment with Blogging the Boys, SB Nation for Dallas Cowboys, Brandon Laurie on Monday morning at 10 a.m. on the Eastern Observer. Let's take a peek at what Rob DeLuca said before we move on to Major League Baseball. He says, quote, "Ravens are too far banged up. Honestly, I do not even think they were healthy. It would have gotten them a win." Oh, I'm sorry. I do not even think if they were healthy, it would have gotten them a win. It would have been closer that way. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Bengals are way too good this year. Bengals by 10. And since we're not talking about Dallas, we'll still get his thought on this. What a bunch of yeah, we talk about the bias here. Quote, "What a bunch of frauds down there in Dallas. Dak Prescott was terrible down the stretch of the season, and I am sure that pleases all four of us. Tampa Bay was not much better this season. 9-8 is nothing to be happy about. 9-8. They're actually 8-9. if you are Tom Brady. This is going to be a close game on the sole fact that neither of them are that good. Bucks by 4. Thanks to Luca. Appreciate it. You know what? We're going to stay here just for 1 second. Let's just get score predictions at least. We spoke about everything else with Brandon Laurie. Let's get our score predictions. Ian, Dallas and Tampa, what do you got with
Oh, yeah, this is actually the same thing I had said to Brandon, that I really just did not want to predict this game because it's I know Tampa Bay is going to have their full complement of receivers. I know it's hard to bet against Brady in the playoffs. I know what the Cowboys' record is on grass, but I think, it's really tough. I just don't like the way the Bucs have been playing this year, and my gut has been telling me go with Tampa, but my head has been telling me go with Dallas. Dallas 24, Tampa Bay 20.
Mike Szabo, your score prediction.
Don't bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs for now. There's a year to beat him. This is the year, but it ain't going to beat Dallas, in my opinion. 28-24.
Yeah. We're not going to go into it since we spoke about it on the preview. Tampa Bay wins 27, and Dallas only scores 17.
Okay.
10-point advantage. Tom Brady in the playoffs, as Mike Szabo said. Do not bet against playoff Tom. Granted, there's so many injuries on Tampa's side of things, but that's really all we got there. DeLuca says, I got them thinking. You're welcome, world. What a way to close out wild card preview. Apparently, the Denver Broncos are willing to part with a first-round draft pick for Sean Payton.
Do it.
It's funny because if I'm not mistaken, didn't they give up 2 first-round draft picks for?
What did Sean McVay say last year about picks? That's what I said.
Well,
you've already gone all in. Just go all in.
I don't know if you need Sean Payton though. Like that's my whole thing. Like he's still.
Oh no, you messed around with
the rights are still owned by the Saints. They're asking for a first-round pick, and supposedly the report is that it didn't scare the Broncos away. I still think they're more than a head coach away. Listen,
I agree.
I mean, obviously, Sean Payton has the reputation of developing quarterbacks. I don't think he needs to develop Russell Wilson. I just think they need the right body.
He can develop Brett Ripien.
There you go. You go. I mean, if that's somehow going to keep Jerry Jeudy on the field, fantastic.
Thinking outside the box.
But I think that it's a tough sell for me with Sean Payton. I know like he's the hot commodity. It's like, a couple of years ago, you go back to Mike McCarthy before he went to Dallas, how everybody was like, the Jets were like, we want Mike McCarthy. We got to get McCarthy here. Meanwhile, he's been so close to getting out of Dallas the last two couple of years. I think they're just, I think we're all kind of chomping at the bit to see where Sean Payton ends up, if he ends up anywhere. But I don't know if that's the road they need to go down. I think you could definitely talk to finally give Eric Bieniemy his shot out of Kansas City. You can, just kind of thinking around the league. I know there actually some teams are interviewing the Eagles OC.
Shane Steichen, yeah,
that's a name that's definitely being passed around. Mike,
I know one.
Giants is another name that's being passed around.
Kellen
Moore. I mean, these are, you just need Russell Wilson. I mean, look, you could definitely tell he was not in the right system with Nathaniel Hackett. We said this earlier. He just needs to be with the right coach, and then put the pieces around them. This is not a situation where you could say to yourself, this team has all the pieces they need. They're a little bit offensively challenged, so Sean Payton's going to take them over the top. That's not Denver's issue. That's the thing. You've got Javonte Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. Yeah, they can get a little better at tight end. They've got a good offensive line that was banged up a lot this year, especially on the left side.
Yeah,
with their All-Pro Garrett Bowles. There's definitely a I don't think they have to take that big of a leap unless they feel they're ready to win next year. And even if, they shouldn't have to be able to. They've got an early pick this year. I mean, actually, no, they traded their pick, but still.
They got Seattle has their number 3 overall.
That's unbelievable. That was all for Russell Wilson. So
yeah.
I'd have to I kind of have to look at their cap situation and kind of see where they would stand coming into free agency. But I don't think they need to sell the farm going forward for Sean Payton. It's not necessary. I think they're looking at it as if they're a year away. They've got the right quarterback. We should be winning a Super Bowl. They're not there yet, but I don't think that they need to go out there and go acquire the biggest coaching name on the market by trading a pick for it.
Exactly. You don't have to. When Cardinals legend Cliff Kingsbury is on the market, just go get him. That's it. It's very simple. Where's my man Kyle Madsen? He'll tell you the good things about Cliff. What'd you say, Mike?
I definitely disagree with the both of you. When's this first round pick that they would trade away for? When I'm 35 years old?
Oh, so that would be when we're dead.
20 years, isn't it? Yeah, I was going to say 20 years maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say that'll be when we're dead, right? Yeah.
It's like the NBA, man. We're going to start trading away 2029 NFL first-round draft picks.
They already traded away a bunch of first-round picks or whatever it was for Russell Wilson. Might as well. Honestly, I know they have other issues and whatnot, but we all remember when when Russell Wilson was requesting a trade from Seattle, what was some of his top destinations? New Orleans, which at the time was being coached by Sean Payton.
It's fair.
So
I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
You would love being down there. I think you'd love that system. You talk about some of the deficiencies. I think Sean Payton knows how to coach and would coach that up.
You're telling me right now, Mike, that the Denver Broncos are the best team. If they get Sean Payton, they're the best team in the AFC West?
No, but I think
they're probably right now the third best team. They're probably right now the third best team in the AFC West, even with Sean Payton. I mean,
no, I disagree. Nope, I disagree.
You want to sit here and poo-poo all over Brandon Staley? Go ahead. I still think when the Chargers have all of the offensive and defensive skill players they do, I still can't put just on coaching alone. I can't put the Broncos.
But they're not even used properly. You have the names, like you can win on paper, but they can't perform on the field. Hence, as what we said earlier in the Chargers and Jags preview, that they've got the Bosas and the Max and all of the above, and they've got the Derwin James, the Asante Samuel Juniors, but they can't get it done together, and the cohesiveness is not there. That's also, and you're seeing it also, what Mike said too, coaching management. It's not there. It's not there. Broncos, in my opinion, they would be number 2 behind the Chiefs if they were to get Sean Payton. Go on, Mike. And then I want to get back to Ian's point too. I want to hear his counterpoint.
I mean, I don't know what their cap situation is like, but I mean, we can't assume that getting Sean Payton would be their only move. I think you'd be a little closer than where you are with Sean Payton. I think he'd coach up some of the pieces you'd already have. You already went all in terms of trading for Russell Wilson and going after an established quarterback after it really didn't work out with Drew Lock.
Exactly.
Why not?
Yep.
Why not? I think Russell Wilson loves him. Why not?
And just to interrupt you for a quick moment, I want you to still finish. Rob DeLuca agrees with you. Quote, you don't need him if you're the Broncos, but at the same time, they've got nothing to lose, which I would assume DeLuca means because they already went all in. So you might as well just say, all right, let's raise whatever it is and just go ahead. Just throw every single chip that you've got in the bucket.
Yeah, I mean, you've already mortgaged a lot for, obviously not trying to compare their abilities and get into that, but, and the Rams were obviously more established, but, the Rams acquiring an older, more established quarterback in Stafford to eventually get over the hump. I'm not saying that would happen with the Broncos and whatnot, but they spent a lot in terms of mortgaging their future and picks and whatnot for Russell Wilson. Why not a little bit more for Sean Payton? I don't think there's another team. If Sean Payton's going to go and coach anywhere, I think this offseason, I don't think there's really another team that's in such a great position to say, oh, let's trade a first-round pick to go bring him in. I think you look at all the teams that are looking for a coach that have an opening or will look to make a move or something like that. I think I think the Broncos are the leading candidate to be like, yeah, let's give up that first round pick out of anybody else.
You've got nothing to lose except, and I just put this in the private chat. I'd say Denver would be John Elway would be channeling his inner Sonny Weaver Jr. Because not only will they have traded their 22 first, their 23 first, but now their 2024 first, and I'm wondering if he's going to then trade his second rounders to Jacksonville. But they're a team right now that's without their next 2 first and second rounders last year, this coming draft, and then you throw on a 2024 first plus more. I'm sure it's going to the first round pick is just going to be the conversation starter for the Saints. And then you also have to consider as well, if you are New Orleans, when they start getting competitive, how late is that first round pick also going to come into play? So, they have nothing to lose, like DeLuca's saying, but also they really do have everything to lose. This is a team that already has decided to mortgage the house for Russell Wilson. They have to find a way to make Russell Wilson work. But at the same time, that gives them a very, very short window, if Sean Payton's the coach, to try to rally that team together and try to actually win.
Exactly. My thing is looking at the draft picks. If we're saying they don't have a first round pick 2022, 2023, 2024, if all goes well, you're hoping if all goes well, you're going to be really competitive and playoff caliber with Russell Wilson and the length of the contract and whatnot. So does it really matter? I don't want to say doesn't matter, but kind of does it matter, those first round picks, when if all goes well, those are going to be late round picks anyway.
The issue then becomes, they're saving some money against the cap, Mike. Yes, that's players conceivably you don't have to pay, but also if these free agents choose not to sign with Denver, where exactly are you putting other key positions? Who are you assigning to other key positions on the field? If Russell Wilson doesn't have anybody to block the right side of his line, I don't care who your head coach is. If Judy or Cortland Sutton decide to bolt. Now, granted, Jerry Jeudy was the talk of trade conversation. So if you start losing wide receivers and then you've got wideouts that don't want to sign there, where do you turn? Okay, we got Sean Payton. That's great, but we don't have players around him that we need to succeed. At this point, you're listen, Denver's interested, so we'll see what they do. We know what the conversation starter is there already, but I just don't see them needing to throw, mortgage the house for Sean Payton when there could be other good offensive names out there that we've mentioned already.
So with that being said, our football segment is done, and we're almost done here too on the rundown. Our last topic of the night before we get into our sports updates and then our kudos, guys. Now the new, I don't want to say new, but returning shortstop Carlos Correa to the Minnesota Twins signed a 6-year deal after all of the talk with the Giants fell through and then the Mets fell through. He's back with the Minnesota Twins. From a Mets fan himself, Ian Schraier.
I'm not going to make this about I'll say this, the day that when he signed with the Twins the other day, I'll say it stung. I think the writing was definitely on the wall. We were being sold a lot of fancy items by different writers saying, oh, it's a done deal. Steve Phillips, Carlos Baerga. The list goes on. I would laugh about it too. But I don't think, and to quote our friend Larry Protakowitz, and I hope he's watching and kind of drops a comment, this is not a version of LOL Mets. This is not your typical.
I wasn't even laughing at you, Ian. I was laughing at DeLuca.
Oh. I'm glad
Go on, continue.
But it stings as a Met fan because it's the one piece you knew, and Steve Cohen said it aloud, right? It's the one piece they needed to put them over the top. But after hearing what we heard at the press conference regarding what the doctors have said about his ankle, saying, I only listen to the guys that tell me my ankle might be okay and not to the other doctors who are seriously concerned about the status of my ankle. Yeah, I'm kind of glad. Who could blame Steve Cohen and the Mets for saying to him, well, for the first 6 years of this guaranteed contract, you got to take a physical every single year. Who could blame them? This is a businessman who's trying to protect his investment. Yes, was his announcement saying we've got the player we wanted was premature? Absolutely. And hopefully that just becomes a learning lesson.
It's a sophomore slump, if you will, for him in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So does this take the Mets out of the running for the playoffs or out of the running for the National League East? No, but not by any stretch. I still think they're a playoff team. I think that the Phillies are much improved, and it's going to be harder for that team, even after winning 101 games with the exact same team that they're going to be rolling out there this year. It's going to be a little bit harder, I think, just my humble opinion. Excuse me. But I'm not as upset about it anymore in hindsight. I really wasn't upset to begin with. I just think it stung because the Mets knew that they finally had that piece that was going to make them maybe a prevailing World Series favorite. And now that player is making a ton more average annual value than he would have with the Mets on this 6-year, $200 million deal to now be back in Minnesota.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I'm a Mets fan, I'm happy about this because of all of the issues that this man comes with.
Yeah.
Mike Szabo, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to hop on the similar trend of same old Mets. I think you guys are right. I think it's not a situation of that.
No,
listen, they're the second team to have passed on a contract with Schraier. We all laughed at the San Francisco Giants for doing so, and then you know the Mets took an extensive look at the medicals and they questioned things too. I mean, the more teams that have an issue with things, you think this is even more of a serious situation than you thought of at first.
Yep.
It sounds like this is going to be an injury that bothers him for quite a bit of time for the rest of his career, and it's not going to be just something that can be whisked away. There's quite a bit of risk. I think this was a very, very unique situation. I don't think you've ever seen with the free agent in recent memory in Major League Baseball. The guy gets, multiple 300 or 250 plus $1 million offers in one off season, and this sort of circus around it all. And yet he winds up with the team that he suited up with last year, which I think presents a whole bunch of problems for the Minnesota Twins in general. I think he always signed Correa always signed the deal last offseason with Minnesota, knowing that he was not going to be there for the long term. I mean, for goodness sakes, who the heck wants to be in Minnesota for the long term? It's just the case of the Twins. And now he's basically got cornered into a situation because of his physicals where, I guess I just got to stay here now. And that's going to be interesting spring training, coming back into the room with everybody, knowing that he was never, like the day free agency hit earlier this winter, he never even thought, I'm sure, of coming back to Minnesota. And now you're basically cornered into it. So that presents a whole other issue for Minnesota. But for the Mets, you lost a big impact bat. I think Steve Cohen sort of changed. I don't want to say change the reputation. He's always going to spend, right? But I think this was the one situation where, I think he'll be a little bit more calculated than people give him credit for. Like Ian said, you have to protect your investment. I think Minnesota gave him about $42 million extra, which translates to $7 million more than what the Mets would have given. And I remember, point being brought up that, it's just $7 million extra, and Steve Cohen didn't want to do that and whatnot. Maybe a year, 2 years, whatever it is from now, we sit back down here and we say maybe it's good that they didn't pay.
It's also about term. Remember, the initial contract for the Mets was 12, 13 years. Going to the Twins for 6, 7 years, you're talking about half the amount of time and a larger annual value of what he's going to bring in. So, no, that's and we have to remember, too, that if everything was fine with his physicals, he'd be a San Francisco Giant. So it's as talking now strictly just to those of you that are tuning in that are part of Mets Twitter and Mets land, and I would not be sweating this out too much. I know it's going to seem frustrating To say to yourself, this is the same team that lost to San Diego in the wild card round last year, really couldn't put 2 hits together in games 1 and 3, had the easiest end of the season schedule in September. The division should have been over and done with. But I do think that they will hopefully learn from their mistakes of last year's trade deadline. And if they have to go out and acquire a major player, I think we've already learned based on early discussions with early observations that they might go after a Machado next offseason, that guys like Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, I mean, maybe everyone just about except Alvarez is on the table come next August.
This is what I'll say. This is Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Not to go too deep into things, but it's strange how he sort of fell off everybody's radar. But come trade deadline, I'd be shocked if Joey's guy Ian Happ doesn't become an option out there, and that will certainly be a bat the Mets look at.
Could definitely see it. It's definitely a possibility. Keep that in mind, is the word possibility. But guys, the last point that I want to make here before we conclude our show and head to our kudos, since we're almost done here. Mike brought up a fantastic point. And I think that's probably the best point that all of us brought up here in this one. Mike, you said this. You said how everything, when he gets in front of the cameras, when he gets back with his teammates, Carlos Correa, that is, how is he going to be received? How is he going to be greeted? That's something else, too, that a lot of people have to understand, too, is that, granted, Minnesota, small market, right? Media, not crazy. Doesn't have to deal with Houston, doesn't have to deal with the Mets, doesn't have to deal with the Yankees, whatever it is, right? Doesn't have to deal with Boston, Philadelphia, whatever. But he might have to deal with the internal issues that come with this, too, because he did not want to come back. He said it over and over again without actually saying it. He said it indirectly. He did not want to come back. So with all of this happening, Minnesota is now locked into this deal that I believe will completely implode at some point. What Rob DeLuca said, obviously, is a joke. All I can say here is, Ian, I'm so sorry. I'm glad I'm not a Mets fan. Sure, but this is not a case of an LOL Mets situation. This is Scott Boras being his typical self. Yeah, I guess, but I think also it's trying to find the best client for his guy, for his guy. And he found the Minnesota Twins to bite and not have to deal with whatever. The Mets, this is a win. This is a complete win. They do not deal with any baggage, nothing. Same thing with the San Francisco Giants. No baggage, nada. They move on. They can try and work out Eduardo Escobar at third base. They can get him right. They can figure things out there. They'll be able to get the bats from elsewhere. They probably are going to have to make a trade at some point, or they might make a late offseason addition. You never know. I don't know who's out there right now, but there's someone out there that they might get or potentially have on their bench, whoever. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the Mets avoided a disaster. And if it were the Wilpon era, they would have signed it, no questions asked. That's really what I believe. And I also believe, too, that with what the Twins have, they will not be a World Series champion with Correa. Ever. No. This is we are going there for the money. Carlos Correa, that's all he wanted to do was go for the money. He already won a World Series. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a rat's you-know-what. That's it.
You mentioned Minnesota Twins and World Series in the same breath. I'm sorry to just dunk on Twins fans tonight, but
I don't think you're dunking on Twins fans. I think he's just kind of calling a fact. The fact is that outside of Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, that it's a team that obviously Gio and Gary are still there. I'm not really sure. No, because I think Gary's a free agent now. But Gio Urshela.
No, Gio Urshela was traded to Los Angeles, to the Angels.
That's right. So it's Byron and it's Correa and it's they have done a decent job, the Twins, and I'm sure we'll preview the AL Central a few weeks down the road. But they've done a good job kind of revamping the rotation a little bit. But from a lineup perspective, Minnesota. I mean, it's going to be another year where those teams in the AL Central are just going to kind of beat up on each other, and I think the best worst team will come out on top. So yeah, I'm not expecting the Minnesota Twins to be winning a World Series anytime soon or even making it to the World Series.
So our main portion of the show has come to a close. Sports updates here. Liam Hendriks from the Chicago White Sox shared on all of his social media platforms that he was diagnosed with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer diagnosis. He will be getting treatment immediately, and we'll hope to see him obviously at some point. I don't want to say he's out indefinitely. We haven't heard a timetable from the Chicago White Sox about that. But from all of us here at the Houston Observer, we do hope that he does get the treatment that he needs, and hopefully we see him back on a baseball mound at some point soon in 2023. The Los Angeles Dodgers made a trade with the Miami Marlins. They acquired shortstop Miguel Rojas. He probably will be, or not probably, is going to be replacing Trey Turner, who had moved on to Philadelphia. So he'll be the new starting shortstop in Los Angeles. Also, looks as if that Ian's had said here, Yankees and Frankie Montas avoid arbitration with a $7.5 million deal. So that's okay there for all Yankees fans. But yeah, that's pretty much what we've got. Guys, let's head to our kudos since we have about 3 more minutes left. Mike, take it away with your kudos.
I wish I could find the video now. I know they had highlights. I came across the highlight. I forget what event they were doing. It was like a soccer match with amputees. I forget. It was somewhere in Europe. I forget where it was. I'm drawing a blank on the details. But an unbelievable goal from this amputee. I forget his name. And it was like a side volley, like bicycle kick. It was unbelievable for a guy playing on one leg. Hats off to him, and that was an incredible highlight to see. So that's my little kudos without the specific details. The other kudos I'll say as a good luck showing my bias to the Giants, and congratulations to Brian Daboll. Fantastic regular season. Hope they go out and play really well this weekend in Minnesota.
Wow. Biased. Ian Schraier, go on.
For me, and actually just also some other news about arbitration, Pete Alonso and the Mets 1 year, $14.5 million to avoid arbitration. But my kudos go to the Detroit Lions. The job that Dan Campbell did in his first year leading the Detroit Lions to what is a second-place finish in the NFC North, knocking off the Green Bay Packers in Week 18. This is a team that is very much on the rise. A lot to look forward to with that franchise for the first time, we can say, in a very long time, probably since the Jim Schwartz days, really. So kudos to you, Detroit. You deserve it. A lot to build around. Curious to see what you guys do with your 2 first-round draft picks come April.
Yeah, really, really crazy stuff to see what the Detroit Lions have in store. I'm pumped to see. Before we get to my kudos, of course, you know what the crazy part is that, folks, for all of those that are watching, and I'm going to throw DeLuca under the bus because he would do the same for all of us. DeLuca has off today, right? DeLuca has off on a Friday, right? He's not here with us. He's here with us in spirit, right? Like typing and.
You should come in for like the last 3 minutes just to try to defend this. But
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he says, "Send me a damn link right now." His kudos goes to the Primetime Rundown Survivor Pool team, champions for the very first time, redeemed ourselves after a poor year last year. Larry P going 16-2, running away with the individual title. What a guy! Myself then going 14-4. Just the two of us carrying this team on our backs to victory. But in all seriousness, the whole squad, we did it. And the only guy that is 0-2 is me.
We'll trade
everyone
you.
Else.
We'll swap you and Evan next year.
Everyone else. Yeah, exactly. Everyone else.
Are you sure about that? Do we want to now?
Hey, listen, I was atop that list. Let's take a peek here. We have a couple of seconds here. The standings though, 13-5. Hey, listen, I did better than Ian Schraier, and I did better than Evan Winter. Look at that. Okay. All right. So it wasn't that bad.
Tyler Adele finished above 500. Who would have thought it?
None of us. So my kudos goes to my good friend Anthony Iapoce. He was named the Toledo Mud Hens field manager. Now, for those that do not know, the Toledo Mud Hens, the Detroit Tigers AAA squad, He is their head manager now. So congratulations to him. He replaces Lloyd McClendon.
Wow.
Crickets. Yes, that's right.
Pirates legend.
I was gonna say. I was waiting for Ian to come up
legend.
with Lloyd McClendon legend. Yes, because it was just a matter of time. I couldn't figure out what team.
Oh
but
man!
yes,
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to subscribe to our channel by searching the Primetime Rundown on YouTube, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey. And please do the same with our friends over at the Essential Wrestling Podcast by searching the Eastern Observer on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time, Joey Jarzynka, Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo saying so long, and we will see you all next week for episode 107.